Hey, my name's Karen, and I don't know, I'm just sort of a gypsy, and I came across the conversation and co-creators convergence and all of these amazing people, and I said, let me be a part of these Thursday night calls. So I help facilitate coordinating people who are coming onto these calls. So on behalf of the conversation and co-creators convergence, I welcome you. I put a little information up in the chat about the conversation and co-creators convergence if you'd like to learn more about them. I know that since the moment I heard about both groups, my heart just, was very drawn to see how I could be part of supporting what's happening in this amazing dynamic of co-creation. And as far as the conversation, which I think I just learned about 2 months ago, Bob, maybe 3. I don't know. I said this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know Peter and Celeste and Jamin from like this sort of personality basis. But the moment I met each of them, my heart was like, I know these people. These are my people. So I'm just sort of running to catch up with them to be able to really support and share what they're doing here on this platform. And Co-Creators Convergence hosted a Thursday night call once a month, and they merged with the conversation. And so now we have been doing this weekly. Somebody comes on to sort of be the conversationalist, and then we ask them to invite somebody the next week. And just in 6 or 8 weeks, I've met the most phenomenal people because of this sort of leapfrogging, which is really, I think, how we're all meant to be in the world, really living from our heart, from the truth of who we are as humanity, which is we are all one. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who's going to introduce Peter on this amazing topic of unity tonight. So Bob, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone who's watching this on a replay on the Co-Creators Convergence archive page, sometime 24 hours from now or beyond. And thank you, everyone who is energetically with us, whether you watch this now or later or ever. This is a fun evening for us. My beloved Noelle Marshall and I call ourselves Light Partners, and she'll be joining me here in just a few minutes. I got to tell you, I think when we met Peter, and it's my joy to introduce Peter this evening, by the way, to a couple of you who may not have met him before. He is so world famous, most people have, and but he's got a special message for us this evening in his reflections of the Caravan of Unity across America. I think when Peter, we first met, it was probably at the first Co-Creators Convergence, wasn't it? Yep,
that was the first time in person. I think we had connected online through the Conversations with God work, but yep.
Right, and so we, the very first of the now 7th annual Co-Creators Convergences at Sunrise Ranch, Peter was there in the circle with those 38 people the first year and said, as we went around the room and introduced ourselves, my name is Oneness, cleverly disguised as Peter Melton. And he had our full attention ever since. Peter has been an ambassador for Oneness for 25 years. He was the director of youth programs for the Conversations with God Foundation starting in 2000, 20 years ago, Peter. 20 years.
Whoosh.
Wow. In a flash, right? And he's also one of the original members of Humanity's team back in 2003. Peter is a creative visionary and the founder of the Unity sign. He'll talk to us about that for sure later on. He's also an event producer, skill set that was amazingly put into place with all of its adaptability and flexibility on the Caravan of Unity, and is a storyteller extraordinaire and the author of a couple of books. One's Fables of Unity, and also Waves of Oneness. Oh, wait a second, there's more. And the Golden Rule 2.0. There is no other. So his passions, which we have followed and we have supported for many, many years, include youth empowerment, spirituality, and bringing heart and soul to our climate crisis. We've had many conversations about all of those subjects. And Peter is just amazing in how much he puts his heart into that. Any of you who might find him on Facebook know that he's down in North Carolina recovering from the caravan and playing with nieces and nephews and other family members. And it's always a joy to see his photos on Facebook, whether it's at an Oktoberfest or wherever else he's hanging out, and energizing, empowering, and being energized by young people. He recently co-founded the Zoom Transformation Portal, which Karen was just talking about, theconversation.cc. And so we appreciate them making this space available to us every Thursday for us to have stimulating conversation, inspiring conversation. And Peter, I would, a number of us know bits and pieces about the Caravan of Unity across America and how that came to be and your role in it. Maybe even a couple of us were physically in the same zip code with you on part of that caravan. And Flo, you were there, I assume, in Chicago. Yeah. And but if you would, Peter, give us some perspective about the Caravan of Unity, Unity Earth, how you got involved in that. Anything you'd like to tell us more about your background, but we really advertise this as an opportunity for people to understand what the caravan was about. And for me, very importantly, now that you've had a few weeks to, give us some of your reflections about what was significant about it. You believe for the world, for the country, for yourself.
Wow. Thank you, Bob. What a beautiful introduction, and just causing me to pause. I don't know how much this resonates with others of you, but I just don't stop to think about the stuff that I've done. And it's just too easy to put it in the rearview mirror and sit here focusing on, okay, what am I doing right now? What am I doing next? And even more than that, to what I'm feeling in this moment is that I tend to even trivialize some of the stuff once it's passed. And I think that's something about maybe the Western mind that's so now and future, more future oriented, I think, even than now oriented. And I'm really feeling that in a different way right now. It's been, well, over a month since the caravan ended. And as you mentioned, I've spent most of that time here in North Carolina. My sister and her family moved here a couple of years ago, and they took my 3 little great nieces and nephews with them. And I'm just now realizing how much I've missed having the little ones close by. They are now 4 and 2 and 9 months. But I only lived a half an hour from them there in middle of California on the coast near Santa Cruz. So I got lots of time with them in 18 and 19 and no time with them at the end of half of 19 and all of 20. So just pausing long enough to really feel into all of that I just said. But having you recap and just shaking my head at the 20 years or at the 10 years of this and the 5 years of that and the World Unity Week and the humanities team and the caravan, and thank you. That was a nice reflection to be with. And I'm happy for this to really be, if anybody is drawn to raise your hand or ask a question or just barge in with a question or a clarifying comment or anything, please do. This is in no way, me needing to ramble on. But I'll start with the caravan, as you asked, and kind of give some framing on that. As you mentioned, I've been dreaming of a new hand signal for 25 years, 26 years actually. It started in Woodstock. I went to the Woodstock 25-year reunion, and as I'm pulling into Woodstock, this guy comes up and says, "Peace, man." And I'm like, ugh, that sign just doesn't do it for me. And that started this 26-year process, which found itself almost 2 years ago now, year and a half ago now, connecting with Ben Bowler And while connecting with you, Bob and Noel, I was in Florida doing a trade show, and I stopped by to see Bob and Noel, and they were saying, "Hey, are you in tune with this Caravan of Unity?" And I'm like, "I heard of it, but what is going on with that?" And so then I connected with Ben, who I'd not known before, and shared with him some of my ideas and the Unity sign, and then he said, "Yeah, come on our call and let's talk to people about it." And so I got involved with the World Unity Week, or with the Unity Earth, and came to realize, of course, the caravan was being halted, but that the World Unity Week was going to take place and have all of these different categories and things and outreach, and these calls that Unity Earth has are just amazing. The people that are on them, and I found myself instantly, like at your co-creators convergence, just in a room full of kindred souls, and I started realizing what they wanted to do with World Unity Week, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Of course, the whole Zoom world was just kicking in at that time, with all these programs, and I said, "Hey, nobody talked about the children. How about I help with the kids program?" And then it was, "Hey, somebody said they wanted to do a film festival," and I said, "Be sure to call me. I got some film contacts." And then they announced they wanted more climate change information involved in World Unity Week, and I'm like, "Yeah, tell me who's in charge of that one. I'm all over that." That's been my last 7 years. Has really been in the climate change world, and so all of a sudden I found myself doing the youth program, the film program, film festival, and the climate change program. And I was just all in. And COVID had just been kicking into gear there. And so I had all day, every day to just play what felt like playing, networking, bringing people in, and just exploring this new way of sharing information that World Unity Week was. That spawned off the program that happened before that, One Earth Live. I don't know if all of you are even familiar with that, but that was really the kickoff moment. Chris Decker and the gang unify and uplift, and so just this new mode of communication and the new mode of technology was coming in. And so I went crazy with World Unity Week, to just sum it up there, because I also got involved in the dance stage and then the men's work stage room, and I was just fully all in. And when that finished, it was a big exhale, and then like, all right, what's next? And kind of hung out for a little bit, and then they started talking about, well, what the heck, we should do this Caravan of Unity. And even though it wouldn't be what it was going to look like with people joining in and following all around, we've got the Grace Cathedral, and we've got Washington D.C, and we can plug in the places in between, and let's do virtual made for broadcast events. And I live near San Francisco, so I say, "Hey, Ben, I could help you with the San Francisco event," even though I had heard they were could only have 12 people in the cathedral at any one time. And I'm like, "Well, that's all right, I can help, and I don't have to be inside if that's what it takes." And Fumi was doing her flag ceremony there also. And so I signed up to help with San Francisco, and then came word that Mike Molda and the Creative Minds folks that I had met through World Unity Week and connected with Ben and Unity Earth, well, it seems like they had the urge to travel the country and be the tech team to do the Caravan of Unity. And so when Ben announced that they were going to travel across the country, I'm like, wow, that sounds like me. I'd like to do that. and tell that story, right? And be the eyes and ears and hearts for everybody on the ground. And so I said yes, and everyone said yes, and we did the San Francisco event, which was absolutely epic to be in the cathedral. 8 musicians, 6 tech people, and me, and a little bit of the time Fumi, and a little bit of the time one of the other gals, in this gigantic cathedral. And I wrote an article about it, and it dared to try to put it to words. It was just, I was standing in the middle of the aisle at the end of the pews, and up on the altar in the stage area were all the musicians, but they were far enough away that I couldn't really see them playing. but I could hear them playing, of course. And there I was with the music and the cathedral and the incredibly high ceilings and stained glass and all of that. And I just had these moments of, this isn't Peter hearing music, right? I am the cathedral. That the walls and the stained glass and the height of the ceiling and all that was happening with the kickoff of the Caravan of Unity. And we had just finished the flag ceremony, and it was just one of those moments. And this is the kickoff, right? This is the first day of the caravan. And I just had one of those existential moments of just knowing myself so far beyond my humanity, that I was the walls, I was the glass, I was the sound reverberating. And I sat there and I wept at the back of the aisle, the back of the pews. And I was that sounding board, because all the musicians were talking about, this is really weird to play in a big, beautiful cathedral to nobody. And so I became that nobody, which was really, really, really neat. And that kickoff was so powerful to have that experience. And then away we went, and we drove down to LA, and we got to stay at Pato Bonton's house, Pato and Antoinette. He's a reggae star from many years back and a very strong Unity proponent. Stayed at their house for a couple days. We filmed them there at their house. We got to be part of the online thing for the Moment of Choice book launch and just be so received. It was gorgeous. Then we headed on to Las Vegas. But before I go any further, I just want to open if anybody has anything they feel like they want to add or question before I move on. Karen?
So it's kind of logistical, but I think I had read something like this is like 4 years in the making, that before this caravan took part, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I also was curious, was Ben the original founder, or who was sort of the inception point?
Yeah, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm off, or maybe Bob, do you just want to answer that? I think you've been involved with them longer. And you're
muted.
I can add some of it to it. Unity Earth. I'll put the URL in the chat here in a sec. Unity Earth was created probably 4 or 6 years ago by Ben Bowler, excuse me, and quickly by many others, adding to the energy of that. Intended to be a countdown to 2020. Intended to be about bringing unity on the planet, or if not, at least amplifying that unity which exists and inviting in more unity on the planet as it relates to humanity, as it relates to humanity's relationship with the planet itself and all other relations, as our indigenous brothers and sisters would say. And so there were the world events around the world for the last 4 years that were gatherings of festivals, music, peacemaking, ceremony, that included many, many different cultures, many different countries, in many different countries, the most recent of which was in the Holy Land in first week of February of this year. And the full intention of it was a pathway to the International Day of Peace in September in 2020 in New York City. And that was the destination point, recognizing that, as we all know, when we get to the destination, we immediately declare it as the beginning of the next, whatever the next is, the next phase, the next self, the next consciousness, the next life, the next iteration, the next incarnation, and which has also now been declared about our journey for the next 10 years to 2030. But the Caravan of Unity was, for a number of years, intended to be across the United States, not just a single path along the interstate, maybe that with motor coaches and peacemakers and musicians and others, but a wave across the country that was intended to have physical events across the United States. And within 6 months prior, the folks in Europe said, well, we're doing a Caravan of Unity across around Europe as well. And by then, the pandemic had them recognizing that it would be planned from the get-go as being a virtual event, which was what happened with in the United States was it became that after the planning for physical events became obvious those weren't going to happen. But as Peter said, it became some of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And I think, didn't they have some event in 2012? I want to say it's at least 8 years, a U-Day. So I
You're
think
right.
Ben and others have been doing events at sacred sites for at least those 8 years and probably more under Unity Earth.
Right.
And so
You're right.
just kept growing. And, you know, when the pandemic hit, it instead of just doing that physical caravan across the states, it became World Unity Week, and then came the Up Convergence and Peace Weekend also. So it became so much more. The pandemic really gave wings to this whole angle.
Indeed. Very much so. It might have been a physical trip across the country for a limited number of people and maybe some other events in other parts of the country. It turned out to be, you're right, a multi-Zoom room convergence of the world, and an amazing amount of connection, networking, love, and content about the good that's going on in the world. I just put the URL in the website there, and in the chat, and so you can check out more about the history of it, but also about these other activities that we've talked about. World Unity Week that Peter was up to his eyes and occasionally just over his head, gasping for breath, as were a number of us. And then that begat the Unity and Peace Up Convergence in September leading up to Peace Weekend.
Well, also, I asked that in part, Peter, just because kind of the way I happened upon the conversation. And I mean, of course, I trust Bob and Noel now implicitly. And I know they told me about the conversation actually like a month or so ahead of time, because then when I actually came to it, I was like, oh, I remember you told me about this like 6 weeks ago. So sometimes we get that yes and it's immediate, and that's what I felt from you, Peter, like when you heard about it, you know, you got the yes and you followed it. And I know sometimes I get the yes and then I'm a little slower, but what I really wanted to, like, I've had that experience where it's just yes and we follow that from our heart. And I know it sounds like, Peter, you know, you work a lot with children, and that's my passion, and that's what I really want to cultivate, is like reminding people to be in that space of open-heartedness. And when we feel that, we hear so many times, I felt like I wanted to do that, and then the mind kind of got in the way. So I did want to just touch on that. And I think even too, like Flo just wrote in the chat, full disclosure, I was supposed to be a part of Caravan in Chicago, but it didn't quite work out. Story for another time. And so we have these moments where we get the yes. And I just feel like our world right now, to be in the truth of unity, is, as humans, how do we learn how to follow that yes when we first get it? And I feel like, Peter, you've probably had that experience a lot.
Yeah, but thank you. And what a rich question, to the point that, you know, you listen to a talk, you read a book, you go to a workshop, there's all these different avenues. And now with the technology the way it is, there's a million things you could watch at any second to try to access that. And I suspect that each of us here on this call have done our share of seeking, I guess is a good choice of words. And then you have times where you just don't need it for a while, and then you do again. And what a dance of consciousness, what a dance for this whole game of unity, if you will, because it's just so real to me that we're living in at least two worlds, right? There's this oh so real physical world that each of us feels and have been deeply indoctrinated in. And, you know, we've got to make our money, and we've got to do our fun things, and we've got to be worried about that, and we've got to want to try to do this. and just the massive physical reality to all of it. And then when you bring unity in, to attempt to create unity on the physical plane is just such an incredible dance, because how can you be unity with a completely opposite idea? You know, that's really much like we see now with our political situation. I was listening to one guy today. He said, Biden says he's going to unify. How do you unify with some people who think so completely differently than you, right? And that striving for, how would you have a program that felt unity-ish to both the hardline Republicans and the hardline Democrats, and how do you do that? And if you compromise enough, are you going to not really please anybody and just have this in-between thing? And so how do we do unity on the physical plane is a big question. And I think part two to this is how we do it. Is part two, the other world we live in is consciousness, life, love, God, call it what you may, the spiritual realm. And like last week, Bob, you know, the great line, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And last week, Bob saying we're spiritual beings having a political experience, right? Because we do need to step in. And many spiritual people, I think myself included, have not been drawn to politics my whole life. It's not drawn me at all, at all. In fact, I embarrassingly had to tell my niece the other day, I don't even vote. I haven't even voted half of the time that I could, probably even less than half, definitely less than half, you know, of the times I've even voted. And anyway, another story. But when we get to the spiritual realm, that are we really spiritual energy having this human energy experience? Can I believe that in my bones? Can I know myself beyond my humanity to a level where I can accept that I am life happening? And life is lifing this way as Peter, and lifing that way as Melissa, and that way as Carol. And that we're all, that the unity that we are is that we are this, as far as we know, 14 billion year story unfolding in the way that it is. And that it took everything happening the way that it happened to get here. And that's us, right? That we are the Big Bang. We are the exploding of the cosmos. We are, you know, millions of years, billions of years of the elements getting themselves in shape. We are galaxies bursting into existence. We are solar systems. We are the sun falling in love with the earth, and the earth falling in love with the sun. And that's part of our story, that magnetism, that alluring. And then we're the earth trying to figure out what is it to be an earth. And then we are life stemming out of the earth, and then plants coming out of the ground, and animals coming out of the water, and plants learning how to eat the sun and spit out this other stuff. And then the animals who come out decide that they're going to eat the plant poop, right? And we're going to have the oxygen, and we're going to give back the CO2 and it's just, as I start to own myself as all of that, and that all of us are all of that. Now we're the earth evolving. We're this life evolving. We're mammals evolving. We're just this amazing consciousness taking form in every possible different way, right up to this moment where consciousness is experiencing itself through each and every one of us in its own way. And that's what we are. We're all of it. And I'm one tiny, like Bob said when I introduced myself, I am the great oneness cleverly disguised as Peter. And to dare to try to own that as who I am, then that allows me this unity consciousness that can then say, I'm all of that, and yet I also get to have this weird experience of being what I feels like a separate person named Peter. But as I attempt to have unity with others who don't feel or believe like I do, then if we can both just backtrack to this place where we are life happening, then we have a chance at that. And that's what I wrote about in my book called Waves of Oneness, because I think the grandest expression, the grandest metaphor of this unity is when if a wave took on human consciousness and thought of itself as somehow separate from the ocean, that it would be pretty confusing. But in my story, these two waves get to talk, and they come to realize that while a wave is a wave, the wave is also the ocean expressing. And so I am life expressing, and it's expressing as Peter. So Peter gives life the chance to see itself the Peter way. And that's what we're up to. And that's what I'm up to. And somehow those two have to blend in order for us humans to create and have unity consciousness, and then dare to share and be the example of unity consciousness out into the world, while some of our brothers and sisters don't share those same ideas and don't have the craving to understand oneness in that way, or see it in a different way, and that we can just be present to the fact that, yes, we're different. And life set it up that way. Life didn't want us all to be the same, or life would have made us the same. Or maybe they tried that in some other parallel universe, God knows what. But here we are. And Alan Watts said it so beautifully, that with infinity as your game playing field, right, that eventually life was going to get around to this game. You know, and if we dare to think of infinity, and that's another thing, just blows your mind to think how vast the universe is, but how vast time, if you believe in time, even how vast that is. And the thought of billions of other galaxies and billions of other planets not too different from ours, circling stars, and just all the dimensions that are possible. You know, here we are thinking we're the thing. And yeah, sometimes you just got to have a cosmic chuckle. So I don't know. That was me trying to make sense of something there in the unity world.
Barbara often would conclude something of a vast body of thought and reflection, as you just did, Peter, with, and then there's a cosmic laugh.
Oh, did she say that? I don't. Oh, because I have what I call the cosmic chuckle, which is that laugh that comes up. Oh, aren't you cute, Peter, trying to explain the universe? Right? It's just like, good try, buddy. What the heck, you know? But it's fun, and I think it's fun for life to experience Peter trying to make sense of it, and knowing that it's just one perspective. It doesn't have to be the right one. But I have for a long time strived that somehow this has got to make sense. Somehow it's got to make sense. And so I dare to create stories for myself to where it can make sense to me and leave me feeling good. Because I guess that's my goal.
Well, if I may jump in here.
Please.
I was just reacting to somehow it's got to make sense. And I'd like to say somehow it really doesn't have to make sense. And I remember reading or hearing somewhere that, I don't remember who said this, but the universe is even stranger than you could ever imagine. You know, so trying to make sense out of something that we can't even imagine how weird it can really get, you know.
Right. Well, I think that's part of the equation, right? That in order for it to quote unquote make sense, you have to realize that we're playing with these tiny little minds in the vast game and complexity that we don't get to know, and we don't get to know. And so there you are in your present moment, or here I am in my present moment, wanting to at least think I have, you know, some part of the story put together that includes I don't get to know, but also includes me being the joyous expression of the 14 billion year story, cleverly disguised as Peter for a moment, who's enjoying the thrill of trying to figure anything of it out. Thank you, Melissa. That's great.
Yeah, the other thing, when you were talking about unity and how do we come together, and two things that came to me while listening to all of you speaking was, you know, I just hearing your story. So like just hearing your story, Peter, because I've known you for a little while via Jamin, and yet I don't really know you. And so it was kind of interesting to hear the depth, part of the depth of you. It's probably just scratching the surface of you, of course. But if you think of just us in this room, like we're a collection of incredible stories, right? And one of the things that nature needs to be healthy is diversity. So when you think of getting rid of our diversity, it doesn't make us healthier. It actually makes us much weaker. But I was just coming back around to this idea of unity, like how do we find each other? So I find this fascinating that I didn't find all of you before now, and you didn't find me before now, and yet we've all been doing this work for probably a very long time, right? But there's this kind of alignment happening now, and this intentionality between bringing us all together, all this diversity together in conversation. So that was one thing. But then coming back around to unity, I heard something yesterday really interesting. It was a reporter at one of the poll counting houses. I believe it was in Phoenix, Arizona. And they were interviewing people who were counting the ballots, the vote. And they said that there's one Democrat and one Republican working together as teams with a spotter who just makes sure there's no cheating going on. And they were talking about how, despite the fact that they were from opposite parties with opposite opinions, they were working together and having fun together. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? And so what that's leading me to say is that if we can find something that we all care about, right, and love, then it doesn't really matter about our differences, because we can all work towards that. I love hummingbirds, or I love orca whales, or I love, singing brooks or something that we can all collectively work together towards as a unification around loving Mother Earth, loving life, taking care of the planet and one another.
There's the rattle from Clover Kate. Hello, sweetie. Good to
Thank
see you there.
Kate. Yeah, that's beautiful, Melissa.
Bob,
saw-
Noelle said this morning that when you were working yesterday or 2 days ago at the polls, that you ran into that same thing, that you were working together with the Republican, I don't know what you call it, poll workers, right? And that you all managed to have a good time and you all had a common goal, making it work right together.
That's why everybody froze, because I just got kicked. I went off and on. Did you hear any of that?
Oh, no, we didn't hear you, Bob. Flo, we heard Flo. Did you hear Flo?
I did not.
We didn't hear you.
Oh, okay. I was saying that this morning in the morning meditation, you weren't there, but Noelle was talking about your experience working at the polls and how you were working with the other Republican poll workers and how good it felt to work together for a common goal.
And we weren't working with Republicans as Democrats ourselves, because we are not that. And we are not Democrats either. But yeah, we knew going there that 75% of the people that walked in the door, of the 557 people that walked in the door in that 13 hours, were going to pull a lever that said that they support what's been going on for the last 4 years. But we didn't know which ones of them were those 75%. And we also knew that the precinct official is a registered Republican, and her assistant was a registered Democrat. All the rest of us poll workers, the other 12 of us, we had no idea if we had an affiliation, and we didn't discuss it. And we were having a good time. And more importantly, we were fulfilling what we believed to be a responsibility that we had in common. And that was serving the public in the first moment, the very moment of democracy. If there's democracy in this country, which I don't think there is, but story for a long other day. But what elements of democracy we do have, the moment of it is the moment that people come in and say, I believe in this. This is what I'm going to check mark. The check mark I'm going to make. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Melissa, about finding that which we have in common. One of the things that I thought about every time that somebody brought their kids or grandkids in with them and took them to the voting booth, I was totally conscious of the fact that the decision the adult was making and the checkbox they checked, the significance of that for that child or grandchild. And again, I didn't know which lever they were going to pull, but I did know that 75% of them were going to pull for what's been going on for the last 4 years just fine. And that's what their grandkids are going to get. And so, it was a humbling moment for all day. It was also one of deep service and reflection. And just to be able to bring back to the theme, Peter, what unity is there in this? What do we have in common? And what are our responsibilities down the line? Because I appreciate that the two waves talking to each other and a recognition that they're separate waves, they're companions in this, they help make the ocean makes them, and all of those connections. Where I struggle is, I guess, with the question that we ask, maybe you have some reflections on this or others do, the question that we ask in our Pachamama Awaken the Dreamers sessions, and that is, a generation from now or 2 generations from now, when your grandkids say, what did you do when you learned about and realized what's going on? You spent so much time with youth, Peter, and so much time on climate issues for the last 7 years. It's like when my grandkids are finally put down their iPad for just 5 or 10 seconds about 30 years from now and look at me and say, what did you do in 2016 and 2020, what is my answer for them? And because whatever the world will be 30 years from now, we have a role in that. I don't know that those 2 different waves have a role in other words, this artificial thing called time. We humans think we're rolling through this thing called time. I'm not sure the waves are rolling through a thing called time. They don't know that's been invented. They've just been waves. They've been waves ever since the Earth fell in love with the sun and otherwise, or the moon and otherwise. So anyway, rambling thoughts. I don't know if there's questions in there or reflections or not.
Nice. Karen, I think you have your hand.
Yeah, this is so beautiful. And Melissa, you just really moved me with your words. So I mentioned before we kind of got on this call that I had asked Marco a little bit about participation, and for the first time in 6 or 8 weeks that I've been participating on this Thursday night call, I shared with my friend right before getting on that I was concerned about how many people were going to show up. And I'm very clear that it's my own lesson, because for about 24 months now, I've really been working on the fact that if I stand here, wherever I am, and offer light and love, that it's making an impact in the world. And the energetic is what's important. And then I keep getting challenged with that. So, Peter was actually going to speak. It was going to, be our conversationalist a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't work out. And so Annie stepped back in, and then he fell on this date. And as we've all been watching for the last, 48 hours, I have a son who has just been expressing on Facebook, and so many of his friends, their heartfelt sadness and some disgust and other emotions, so many emotions about how divided our country is right now. And every time I read one of those posts, while it touched my heart, I kept thinking, wow, and we're having this call Thursday night, with these people, who did this, they spent 4 years planning the Unity Caravan, Unity Week, Unity, it's all about unity. So on one hand, Melissa, when you said, my mind wants to say, this isn't enough. I'm not doing enough. We're not doing enough. There's 8 people on the call. It's not enough. But when Melissa said, it's interesting that I just met you all at this time, even though we could have, met sooner, we're similar. I just got this sensation of it is enough energetically. Of course I would like 100 people to be on this call, because what does how many people in our country right now could benefit from what we're talking about right now, and from actually being aware of what you did, Peter, not just you, but Ben, everyone, what we did on this caravan across the country, all for unity. And so I'm holding on to that hope that the energetic is enough. And actually it is my deepest belief of truth, even though I have a moment of doubt here and there. And I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful to hear each other's feedback. And so, I don't know, Melissa, something when you were talking just really shifted me in the core truth of that unity. And then I also want to know, how do I let more people know that this is happening and that we are one, and that we really can live this truth of unity?
I think it's called the slow movement. And it's happening really fast, but it's going slow. And, you know, I would say that it's a blessing this evening, because look at what an intimate conversation we get to have with Peter guiding us, and all of you, that if there were 100 people here, it would be a very different experience. So I think that things just play out the way they're meant to, but that this movement is happening so fast, slow, that it is happening. And so I think, you know, you have to just set your intentionality, and that there will be other times, although when there will be more people, but don't also forget that each one of us will impact our communities and our entourage by even just this meeting tonight. Like, I'll go out and talk with my friends, and Peter will go talk with his friends, and Bob will go talk with his peeps, you know. And so I think it also has this ripple effect, you know, of spreading out what we're doing here, and literally, physically, as well as energetically, spiritually. Thanks. And I just have to go out and feed the raccoons because they're banging on my back door. And I'll jump back in a minute.
Great.
Peter, I want to ask kind of, it feels like a follow to that, ask a question that on the physical trip across the country, and one of the things that in the early planning of having a physical caravan before COVID, you know, conversations we were having when we were in Israel in first week of February, and the ones that took place for the 6 months prior to that, in planning in different pockets across the country, in Vegas and in Minden, Nebraska, and everywhere else where we're talking about having events. One of the pieces of the conversation was, and isn't this great? It's going to be in September, just before November 3rd. What impact will we have? Kind of to your question, Karen, is this enough? And, you know, numbers and et cetera, et cetera. And so part of the excitement about planning for that prior to a COVID changing all the plans was about a recognition of a division of emotion, energy, opinion, behavior in this country, and that the caravan would bring either, as you would say, Karen, energetically, or maybe even literally, a change to that kind of behavior. Well, the caravan wasn't that in the physical trip across the country, but there was an element of the physical, which was you and the brothers and people in each of the cities. Did you ever feel, tell us about your reflection on how division in this country related to your trip across the country? Did you not even see it because you were in a little bubble of spiritual people every place you went, and everybody was praying and hitting tambourines and hitting
Yeah, I think
singing rap music? Or was there any element of an appreciation for and the existence of the other during that time?
very good. Very good question, Bob. I think you hit it with the bubble analogy, that we really were bouncing from bubble to bubble, where we knew the people we were landing with were on board with the unity. And like in Vegas, where we had a multi-faith, I think there were 5 different religious leaders. So that one, I think more than any of them, was this feeling of not other, but a blending of energies that had their differences. And so that was powerful. And early in the process, after we went from Southern California, and so that felt like, yes, this is a big part of unity coming to life. Excuse me. It's going to have to be our faiths, realizing that everybody can believe what works for them, you know, barring it bothering other people and hurting other people, and giving that religious freedom, faith freedom, spiritual freedom to each other, that there's no one way, right? So that felt powerful from the multi-faith angle. And, you know, we had several events that had a very strong Native American energy to them. And that, I don't know, I feel like I had to manufacture otherness out of that to me, there's a deep resonance with it. So it didn't feel like an other thing at all. And it didn't even feel like a multi-faith thing. It feels like the Native American and indigenous wisdom feels like an undergirding that is still playing itself out underneath all the different religious beliefs, in particular the care for our planet and for the animals and the plants, and just the honoring that happens in our indigenous world feels like the undergirding, like every religion wishes they had that kind of sacredness and hold it there somewhere, but don't seem, in my experience, to talk about it very much. That it almost became a taken for granted something. So it was powerful in its different way there, in particular in Carbondale. And I see Rita has been on a little bit there. Hi, Rita. She was the spark of the Carbondale event. But in Carbondale and in Boulder and in Kearney, Nebraska, really strong Native American energy in all three of those. And so back to your question, then from Kearney, I went to St. Louis to be part of the Peace Pole in Ferguson, Missouri, which is the location, you know, where Michael Brown was killed and kind of the birthplace of Black Lives Matter for a lot of people. And to be there at the dedication of the Peace Pole, which I saw Dr. Marty posted, I think it was yesterday, they actually planted it in the ground right there at the corner where we did the ceremony. And to be there with the mayor, I mean, I'm like rapping with the mayor of Ferguson and the police chief, you know, we're both at the ceremony, and Dr. Casey is so powerful. And I was just there talking right afterwards with the mayor of Ferguson and her assistant, just the three of us, right? She was thinking about where she's going to put the pole right there where they ended up putting it, which is a T at one of their main intersections in their town, where just so many people were going to drive by this peace pole, and it's only 3 feet off of the sidewalk, right? And they're going to make a beautiful landscaping around it. And we started brainstorming about landscaping ideas. What do you put around this, and how do you make this stand out more? And you know, do people pay to have their names on bricks and make a little walkway, you know, just to be there dreaming with her and to feel into, in a very physical sense, the African American challenge, if you will, of this world, of the racism that has existed for so long, and to be there in Ferguson with the mayor with the peace pole literally in her hand, and just how much that meant. It's like, it's been 6 years and there hadn't been any clear statement of physicalness to say we need peace. And that's what's so beautiful about the peace pole. And I was just on a call, as Bob was, with Fumi and the Peace Pole group, talking about the big Peace Pole Day that's coming up on November 19th, I think it is, and the Peace Pole website.
22nd.
Thank you, 22nd. And so that was another real moment of diversity, I guess we would call it there, where I really got to feel into a very powerful physical location in Ferguson with powerful players, and Dr. Marty, and the Peace Pole, and the Black Sunday painting in the background that had been such a big part of that event, which I was so honored to be involved with also. So that was really a diverse, energetic moment that really, I think when it got to there was just this, wow, look what we've just done, from Grace Cathedral to Inside a Home with Pato, to this amazing event with Multi-Faith in Las Vegas, up to Carbondale for just an amazing day nonstop with Rita and her clan. And I went up to Aspen and saw John Denver's sanctuary, and then we shot up to Boulder and had just a deep experience on the mountaintop in Boulder, and shoot up to Missouri, or shoot up to Nebraska for a fire ceremony in the sunrise at the lake, at the river, and then boom, there I was in Ferguson, and it was just like, wow, what a road, what a wild experience to have. Boom, 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 because we had 6 events in 7 days or something crazy like that in that time window. But Ferguson, I think, culminated a certain amount of things for me. And then we went to Chicago. You know, I felt like there was a bit of a paragraph end or something, chapter turn. And then, well, they were all chapters, but Chicago was such a powerful combination also of interfaith people and a gorgeous facility, and then another event in a more a diversity event at this iGrow location that supports the African community there in Chicago. And just again, shaking my head, and finished with these African drummers and dancers. And so the variety and the diversity was amazing, but that feeling of other was not present. You know, this quest for how do we blend energies to create this unity, that everybody was on board with the quest to be more united, and to show the world that people do care about unity, and that unity is something that folks are striving to create the language for, striving to create the energy of, daring to want to bring diverse groups to the table, and to dare to take those steps together into how do we do this? How do we do this together?
Yeah, how do we execute? I'm very happy you talked about Ferguson, because I was going to ask you if you didn't, because to me that would be a place where, all right, you didn't necessarily have the others, the opposite sides of the conflict that that existed before 6 years ago, the match of which was lit 6 years ago with Michael Brown's death, and the opposing energies since then. But to have the police chief and the mayor, and to have Marty and others that represent those that are more identified with what, if we only look at the thing as a binary, the cops and the black folk, you had some of that energy there. And so I really appreciate you reflecting on that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thanks for saying that, because that was, you know, we didn't land at a church or a place where we knew that everybody coming was on board deeper with the unity message. This was a dedication of a peace pole, and that's pretty broad, right? And that was unique enough that some people came out, and then like you said, you have the mayor, and you have the police chief, and you have people. I think at that one there was just that extra little bit of, I wonder what some of these people are thinking about. Here's this group of folk coming in from all over the world, and they're on this quest for unity, and they landed in our town, and they're going to put up a pole, and here's Dr. Marty. Well, everybody knew her, so you know, here's this powerful local person bringing other people in. So it had that slightly different feel of, I wonder what some of these people are thinking. And it's reminding me of what you were saying about the polling. And I thought that was such a unique thing, to be sitting in a room going, 3/4 of you are voting for Trump, but I don't know which ones you are. And it's a tweak on our judgments and our instant judgments, and then to just have to be in the mystery of, okay, half of the people I'm seeing every day are thinking Trump should be for 4 more years, and the other half aren't, but I don't get to know who they are unless they really state themselves. But someone states themselves, and you see a bumper sticker on a car, and you're like, am I reacting to this? Well, how am I feeling about this? What's my instant judgment about this person? And I mean, that happened to me today. I went to go play disc golf this morning, and here's a truck pulled up with a Trump bumper sticker, and the guy comes out, and I'm like, am I having some judgment about this person just because of that he thinks that I am, but I don't want to, but I'm not, but I am. And wow, right? It's just this, the suit doesn't fit. There's a desire to just want to be completely open and honoring of everybody's experience and choice. And yet it goes so against so many of the things that I hold dear to my heart. It's like, how do I do that? How do I hold it both? That this person, just picking climate as one topic. This person's okay with the president eliminating all these environmental regulations that we're trying to take care of our planet. Does he not know that that's what he's doing? And judgment. What a silly thing we threw into the mix when we decided to play humanity, right? It's like we were going to be so judgmental, and so many of our oh boy, just more tangents. But I remember having this talk with a friend of mine who's a strong Christian person, and I just said, you got to realize that you're really being very judgmental, and I don't want to judge you for that, but what I'm feeling is that Christianity has so much judgment in it of what God does is judges you. And if you want to be godlike, then I guess you should be judging me, other people. And how does that fit or not fit?
Wow. Wow.
I always think that I'm a hypocrite because I'm judgmental of judgmental people. I don't know how to reconcile it.
There is
Yeah.
another perspective, which is Trump is doing a very good job waking us up by being the way he is. Maybe he's just an instrument helping humanity to change, and to become more unified.
Well, a lot of us, after we recovered very, very painfully and for many days or weeks in 2016, just decided to ride that horse for a while and did for a number of years. But my judgment meter comes back out when I say 69 million people have said they're okay with what's been going on for the last 4 years. 69 million people. And those are the ones that voted, not counting the ones that didn't vote, but would have voted for him and are okay with what's going on.
But maybe they just haven't woken up yet.
Maybe they haven't. Maybe they've been programmed, and which I believe is another element of all of this. So the whole question of free will and judgment and all that, free will of humanity, plays into the question also of how humans allow themselves to not to bring forth the creativity that all of us, I believe, have in us, and the ability to be critical thinkers and think for ourselves. Others, anybody else want to, and I appreciate what you're saying also, Peter, about you were wondering what people that were just walking down the street in Ferguson and saw this gathering of people there on the corner doing things, where I had that feeling a lot during the day at the Lincoln Memorial. Because, you had tourists and families and small groups of people, and some of them were all in the same kind of clothes, so they were a part of a group of some sort, and obviously some of them were out on their date with their girlfriend going to the Lincoln Memorial, and here are this gathering of people and a bunch of cameras, and people are waving flags from all over the world. The curiosity, what is the curiosity of those, and you had the experience, as did Noel and I, of people saying, well, what's going on here? We got a chance to articulate in our own words about unity and peace. and world peace, and peace amongst the states, and peace within the states. And,
I see a hand raised there for ST. Would you like
yeah,
to chime in?
please. And
Yeah,
others
hi.
like to chat.
No, I'm just appreciating joining all of you here. I just saw something on TV and I wondered if other people might have seen it as well. And it was just a couple hours ago where I guess Trump had a press conference and was really stating many things where it included many things delegitimizing the election. And not only was that concerning, but what I found was really surprising additionally was initially it was showing up on CNN. CNN actually interrupted him and overspoke. And then they right away said, you know, there's no proof that any of this is happening. And, you know, but it was the first time that I've actually seen an interruption where, you know, we as citizens were then not getting access to news. We weren't able to hear what was, you know, being spoken. And and as I looked at other channels, I was not seeing it getting covered. And that's what was actually concerning to me. So I found what was being spoken being very, very concerning, but I also, you know, and I imagine that there was a concern that it could incite, you know, a lot of unrest in the nation, like is the interpretation that I sensed that something like that type of communication could convey or initiate potentially. But as I'm just outside Minneapolis and I was flipping through other channels on the news. So initially it was on CNN and then it kind of got cut off midway. And then I flipped to another channel and the only other channel that I saw that was covering it was CNBC or or it might have been one of the CBS stations. But then I flipped, that was through Pluto, that was through the general app. And then I turned on my TV for local channels and really virtually none of them were covering it. And it was shocking to me because this was kind of an official press conference. So, I mean, you know, and as I'm just sitting here, I'm also just reflecting on the conversation. So I have some significant concerns about what happened in terms of on a lot of levels. But I'm growing more and more concerned about censorship.
Yeah.
And actually find it very alarming that even though I might personally not, you know, I might have feelings about how somebody, you know, what somebody's saying, I still want to hear what's being spoken. And I'm not okay with anybody censoring our news. You know, the last time that I checked, we're a democracy and not a, you know, like this is not a communist nation. We're not having our news censored, you know, but to hear about things like Facebook censoring and, you know, so I'm absolutely like not in support of hate speech. I'm absolutely not in support of dishonesty. I'm absolutely not in support of like all these different things. Like but I maintain my right, you know, to hear unfiltered, uncensored news and information and to make up my mind as a critical thinker.
Yeah.
And I think that that's all of our right. And so I just wondered if anybody else had picked up on similar issues in their regions, you know, in terms of, you know, did people see this press briefing? Because this is a really big deal, you know, that he's making statements to speak of delegitimizing like the entire process, essentially.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's another one of those fingers or knots, I like to call them knots, that we need to untangle to even try to start talking about them. And thank you. Now, how did you come to this? Are you part of the co-creators or, and you're near Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm in Minnesota and I actually had I had been at the Harmonic Convergence
Ah,
and
great.
realized I hadn't, reconnected in a while. So I'm glad to
Well,
be here
thank
with you
you.
guys.
Thank you for coming back and sharing. And this is really the key of all of it, is that people can come and share something they're concerned about, and now hear a few different reflections about it, and get some different ideas, or find some people who feel the same, and that we just have a place to land, that we can talk with people who are willing to sit for an hour or two or more and just be present. And the harmonic convergence, thank you, was such a key part of the conversation coming to life. We did 10 after parties in a row on their 10 days, July 5th to 14th, after their event. And it really launched the conversation. So I'm so glad to hear. I know we still have quite a few people who joined us during the harmonic convergence who still come back regularly. But back to your question and your very clear and powerful statement is, there's so much quote unquote media now that this censorship game has raised itself. And if somebody says a blatant lie, well, who's deciding that it's a lie? and even if it seems like a complete lie, does that all just get to be aired because it's somebody's opinion, or it's the president's opinion, or it's the CEO of Facebook's opinion, or God knows what? So I'd love to hear some of the other opinions in this room around that. I saw him speak, through some online thing, so it wasn't a live TV thing, and it did not get interrupted by anything. So I don't know. Did anybody else happen to hear what ST's talking about?
I turned on CNN right after they had cut him off, so I was just wondering what the heck was going on. I didn't really know. And then I'm in a mode right now where I turn the TV on and then I go, no, I can't watch it right now. I'm just gonna turn it off. So I didn't really know what happened, but I have heard in the past CNN just cut him off. And I go back and forth between the channels, and I don't personally, I don't want to hear him, so I don't care that they do that. But in my head, I'm thinking the same thing that ST is saying, that we should be able to, it should be there for us to hear and make our own decisions if it's BS or not. Or research it, have the choice to research it after we hear it.
Yeah.
But it surprised me when that's not the first time that's happened. That's been happening maybe for a month now. When he started having press conferences that were political rallies, they cut him off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know that. Oh, go ahead.
I know, even personally, like that's not in alignment with and I definitely want to be respectful of other people's personal preferences, but in general, many of the things that he's expressed are not in alignment with my values. Despite that, I still want to hear what he has to say. And I feel like it's so essential and important to hear what others have to say, to understand different perspectives, even if I completely disagree with them. So, but I take issue with somebody trying to censor what I can and cannot listen to. That I have a very big problem with. And as a nation, I hope we voice this together, because it's our shared right, no matter what our personal opinions might be of anything else.
Thank you so much. I just saw little Melissa just posted an interesting lecture which addresses what is at play on the planet right now. Is Rudolf Steiner's work here is in the link, and she put a link in. So for those of you, with Zoom, you can save the chat at the end of our call. If you go to those three little bubbles and you click on that, you can save the chat and get all these links. So that's some good information. I I know as far as news, I don't remember what channel I was watching tonight, but I just, you know, listening to Trump speak, and it just, the two things that just really got me is like, well, these votes are showing that I won, and the, I don't know if he said the word illegal or false votes, you know, blah, blah, blah. So that was one thing. And then he called the, I don't know if it was actually the poll workers or the people, so I don't want to misquote, but he basically, our current president of the United States said, these people are stupid, you know, which of course we've all seen for 4 years. So that just, you know, that just like hurt my heart so much. And then the second thing, as we were talking about, like ST, just you brought up so many good points and about censorship. And I have to, you know, honestly and authentically say, and not like with any, like just maybe I'm a little embarrassed or not proud of the fact that, so I have 4 boys and they are all pretty vocal, and 2 of them very vocal on Facebook, my oldest one especially. And he posted today, and I just like read his post and I was like, I couldn't even actually respond. Like I didn't have it in me to respond with boldness. Like I actually watch Bob and Noel do a lot, and I'm learning from them. But something that Patrick said is, I just want to read it really quick. It's a little out of context, but he was just so disheartened and crying and sad and hurt at the results of how many people were standing behind Trump. And he wrote, despite that there are still massive swaths of the population that don't feel represented by Joe Biden and the Democratic Party and therefore vote for Trump, is it right to marginalize these voters as bigots, racist, disgusting, shameful, etc.? What are the lessons and opportunities in seeing that this race was clearly not the landslide that we were projecting and hoping for? I welcome all opinions here. And so he got this, like my son and myself included, like we're kind of friends with everybody. We welcome everybody. And so one of his friends said, yes, anyone that voted for Trump is a bigot, a racist. And then Patrick responded, well, I have family members that I know voted for Trump, and I cannot call them bigots or racists because I know that they love me unconditionally, and I know how they love unconditionally. He goes, but disgusted, you know, I can say that. And so I bring that up to just go back to this core piece of unity, you know, like the amount of people that were so heartfully saddened and disheartened by when we look at this divide in our country right now. And, you know, Peter, that's why we have you on tonight. Like, how do we, I mean, I think it gives us an opportunity to come to unity, because I'm looking from that, you know, 6 timeline, you know, level, but it's hard and it hurts. And so I honor my son that he can post on Facebook, and all I could say, like, as his mom, was like, there's so much here. Thanks for sharing. I love you. Like, I couldn't necessarily wholeheartedly express my opinion. And then something a tiny bit different that I'm just going to throw in there that you guys really motivated me. It goes back to something I said earlier about listening to the yes. I've been called to go stay with my friend in Minnesota I'm leaving Saturday, and I'll be there for a couple of months. Well, then I found out that I'd be staying 30 minutes away from where George Floyd was shot. So the moment I learned that, I was like, oh, okay, I get the call. I understand why I said yes. And so I said, I'm going to go to that spot and do the work I do, which is Heart Thread, and I'm going to do a Facebook Live. And as you're speaking, I thought, I wonder if there's a peace pole there. So Bob, I'll be talking to you after this. And I was like, I think I want to up-level this. And Peter, like you and Jamin, and how do I say, is it Sailesh? Sailesh. You guys inspire me so much. And so I'm like, wait, what, can I plant a peace pole there? Like, why not try, you know? So thank you for that. So those are my 3 points.
Awesome. And yes, that's beautiful. And yes, and you can do a little show. We can have Dr. Marty on, who's so, you know, powerful in that regard with her work in Ferguson. And yes, let's do a Minnesota Peace Poll event. The gal who's in charge, Fumi John Stewart, Bob and I were just on with her. She would be thrilled to add that, and we can make a show out of it. And maybe it can happen on a Thursday, and it could be a show we do here or wherever. But yes.
And I think
November
that's
22nd.
actually, that's a testament to the power of what you've created here and what we are creating, what we're all showing up for. Yeah.
Hey, I really wanted to say hi. We checked in with some of you folks, but Allie and Julie and haven't chosen or had a chance to speak yet. If you'd like to connect or have something to say, please check in with us. Say hi, where you're from, what brought you to tonight, if you're feeling that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll say something.
I,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
all right, go ahead.
Let's fight over it.
Go ahead,
Mark.
Allie.
Sorry. I was just gonna say that I think this whole conversation is exactly what I needed to hear today. I've been having like a bit of crisis around the division as well, and just the lack of ability to have conversations about anything. And I think when we put labels on people like bigots or racists or whatever, then we're missing the whole other piece of that person, and that's the actual magic behind them and the actual celestial person attached to the original energy and like what their purpose is in this world. And I think that's a disservice to everybody. Also, with the media stuff, I had a mini tantrum today about not feeling like we actually get correct information. I like to hear everyone's side of things because I like to understand people, and I don't feel like that's accessible lately. It's either polarized to one side or the other, and it's usually not talking about what people believe, but what they don't like about the other side. And I feel like that's not a really great way of getting information. And so I feel like by coming onto this conversation, which I left work early to be able to attend, it was like my own personal yes, because now I feel like instead of being alone and like hunkering down and trying to weather this storm somewhat alone, I'm realizing that there's a whole movement behind what I've been feeling, which is very powerful. So thank you all for the conversation. And yeah, thank you.
No, that's beautiful. Where do you live, Allie?
I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Nice. And you're part of the Co-Creators Convergence, or you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Co-Creators Convergence. Yeah.
Thank you. Something you said there at the beginning was really deep, that, we're so quick to want to judge, and that we're just obviously missing 90% of who the person is, right? And the magic that we, as spiritual endeavors, yearn to connect with. And do you have any thoughts, or what would you, how are you able to do that more? When do you feel like you line up with that better than other times? Go one level deeper on that. How much we miss the magic of somebody when we just disagree with them.
Right. I feel like I am kind of pushed to do that all the time. I'm a social worker in a hospital. So my job is to be able to align with people and advocate for what they want, regardless of if I agree with it. And I think it's a piece of like survival in my position, kind of, to be able to hold that space for somebody, regardless of my opinions or what I think would be best. And I think it is one of our basic rights to be able to have our own opinions. Not to say it's easy all the time. I have to snooze my fish alarm. But I don't know. Also, I have a lot of friends who are very conservative and Trump supporters, and I don't align with a lot of what they believe in, as far as policies go and how they interact with the world necessarily. but I love how they are with me. And I love the respect that we have for each other and our ability to have conversations. And I love just, I don't know, there's all these other pieces to them that I love, and I would be missing out so much on these deep relationships. And if I were to just discredit them for their policies and opinions, I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to chime in and then invite Julie for her comments. And we typically wrap up after an hour and a half, we're at the point we're at now, but this is such a rich conversation, and ST's comment launched it. One of the things that I find myself, I took a 7-week course with Charles Eisenstein called Political Hope. And one of the many things that I remember from that is the significance of labeling and dehumanizing others. And one of the points that he made was, okay, all of you that are in my class tonight, you're probably among the group of people that would say, wow, racism in the United States, that's like, it's dehuman, or indigenous people. We dehumanize them by our policy, the government's policies, actions, individuals' behaviors, quote, leaders' behaviors and whatnot. And in fact, we're really dehumanizing them, whether they're stuck in a jail because of a minor marijuana, whatever. And he said, so how's that any different than if he was talking right to me, I felt like, think the things that you think and have judgment about Donald Trump, are you not dehumanizing him? And it gave me great pause for thought. Second point is, I've heard a number of us now say Trump supporters. I don't tend to say Trump supporters because of the 69 million people that voted for the electors in an antiquated, racist, biased, antiquated system called the Electoral College that then results in who's going to be the president, the 69 million people that voted for him are not necessarily Trump supporters. How terrible it is the way we label people, and because some people voted for that because they're against what they've been told, some of which is lies, about what's going to happen if this socialist or this Democratic guy or this whatever gets in place. Some of them voted for that person because their family has always voted Republican. I heard some of the comments in the polls on Tuesday that people said about, just show me where I vote the straight Republican ticket. That's what the guy 2 doors down with the Trump sign on it, on a flag on his front porch, says. My family has always voted for Republicans. I don't know whether he is a member of the cult of the leader, which is, in my opinion, a subset of the people that voted for Donald Trump, is that they are in a cult, listening to the leader and following whatever the cult leader is saying. But that certainly is not 69 million people. And I really value your point, Allie, about what we're missing of, maybe it's 90% Peter, but if it's any percent, we're missing of lumping people together and saying we have family members that vote that way because they have a single issue, like anti-abortion, that they're about. And and they obviously tolerate the behavior of an individual who happens to be in the White House, and they also have either ignored, tolerated, or closed their eyes to all the damage that's been done in policy actions and changes that have taken place. Like you said earlier, 100+ regulations that protect the environment that have now gone away, some of which are reversible, some of which maybe not. And so, but they aren't thinking about those. They're thinking about their one issue. And so they all voted that way, are amongst the 69 million. And I don't think they're necessarily, quote, Trump supporters of the personality of an individual. So
Perfect.
Deep and helpful discussion, but I don't want to neglect hearing what Julie has to share as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And you posted something, because I think we ended up skipping or not really addressing fully ST's thing either. But Bob, you put something in the chat. Would you speak slightly to that? Because that talked about the airwaves and how we decide what goes on and not.
Yeah, quickly, just that during the Reagan administration, the fairness stuff, I always thought, and I didn't realize until the last couple of years, it's how far behind I am on the facts of policy and that sort of thing. I always thought that if you, a radio station or a television station, got a license from the FCC to operate on the public airways, which is a part of the commons, as are our public lands in this country, although we don't refer to them that way and act that way, they are the commons. That decision back in those years allowed for, no longer required fairness in the reporting over the airways. And so it was subtle at that time, but over the course of time, over the course of decades, over the course of consolidation of corporate media in this country, there is no responsibility to the public in your reporting in the corporate media. So if you are brand F or your brand CNN, you can deliver the amount of news that you want to deliver in the way you want to deliver it, with the bias you want to deliver it. Same fact. The occupant of the White House said this evening factually, but one of them is going to report it one way, one's going to report another. And both of them have hired for hire analysts and commentaries that support that. The Fox view of things and the CNN view of things. And so there isn't, I want to hear the facts too. Now, the big change, of course, in addition to all that, would be in more recent years, everybody with a cell phone in the entire world is now a commentator and a reporter. And so do you believe that? Do I believe something just because Allie posted it today and I'm supposed to believe that as being the facts and the whole story upon which I can discern whether I agree with it, disagree with it, understand it, don't understand it, support it, don't support it. And so it's the Wild West. And I just wanted to put out in my comment that when it comes to corporate media, there's an agenda, and it's not to inform the public of facts that they can, Walter Cronkite's gone, for those of us that are old enough to know that name. And they're not just giving us information upon which we can discern and then make our own, take our own actions.
Yeah. Right when you said Wild West, ST drew her pistol there with her little hand raised. So go ahead, ST. Shoot.
I wouldn't even know what to do. I wouldn't even know what to do with one in my hand. No, I just thought I'd share something that had just kind of come to mind, and it's something that for me has been recentering, even in the midst of all this difficulty. And what it's been is just reflecting on a deeper belief that, like, at everybody's center is just light and love, and how easy it can be for anybody to temporarily forget who they are. And, as soon as I start going there in my mind, like, automatically there's this natural, like, compassion and love that follows that. And it's just a compassion for somebody temporarily forgetting who they are, or for me temporarily forgetting who I am when I find myself getting temporarily forgetting who I am, and then I find myself just thinking about, a picture comes to mind as if a person's, a part of their wounded self was almost like a little baby that I would find myself then cradling, and just an envisioning of cradling them, that part of them, just having this like deep love and compassion for them. And it's just actually a reminding of myself of this deeper belief that I carry. And just feeling like this time period is such a beautiful challenge to really, like, remind myself that is my deeper belief, and to find that love for all of us, and the compassion and the hope of, seeing all of us reconnect with that light and love, and, like, then filling the planet with light and love.
That is so right on and so exactly the message of unity that is the strongest for me is the remembering that we are this naive little species. We just came out of the caves a couple of weeks ago. You know, we're still an incredibly young and naive species. And somehow in this part of trying to understand and make sense of things, the way it makes sense to me, somehow creator, life energy, whatever, allowed for the possibility, set up for the probability that we were going to forget that we are connected to the cosmos and to the earth falling in love with the sun and to the other plants and animals on the planet. Somehow that forgetting was known as a possibility. And I think we're playing out this grand remembering and forgetting game. And that's exactly what's happening, is that we have forgotten a bunch. We remember for moments, we forget, we remember, we forget. That's also the main message of the Waves of Oneness book also, is that we remember and we forget, and that's the game we're playing. And how do we remember more often? And that leads into what Bob mentioned at the beginning, and I hit on slightly, is 26-year quest to have a hand signal. And so I've been sharing what I call the unity sign, which is all about remembering and forgetting. It takes the old 2-finger peace sign, which originally stood for V for victory, and has since then stood for, can we please get along? And this idea that two sides had to figure out how to get along. But that's where we missed it the whole way, is that we're not two sides, right? Bob mentioned at the beginning too, I have the golden rule 2.0. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you, because they are you. There is no other, right? But that's what we've forgotten. It's almost like the gods said, let's do this. Let's create this possibility of a species that would completely forget. Let's create these waves that completely forgot that they're also the ocean, and just see if they can figure it out. What the heck? We got forever. You know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Let's just see what happens. Mix these things in a test tube and play out 14 billion years. And so the unity sign now, this 2 fingers stand for, we used to think we were separate, right? We forgot we were connected. We used to think we're separate, but we're remembering. The fingers come together to your heart. We're remembering. That's what's happening right now. I'm doing my best to remember. And when I do remember, I land in that heart place that knows what you're talking about, ST. Of course, it's all love. Of course, those people are doing the best that they can. Of course, we're all evolving as a species. Yes, and when I can land in that one love, that heart-based unity consciousness, from there, I can begin to act together peacefully on the planet. So the unity sign is a peace in, peace out move that says, I'm doing my best to remember, and from that remembering, I'm doing my best to act that way. Because if we're going to create this, right, because we've all been talking about too, what you're saying, Karen, how do we get more people involved? How do we get more people to even talk about unity consciousness, or dare to have a conversation that leads to someone like ST saying, there's so much good in these people that we're just looking right past because we're so caught up in this judgment and this wanting to be right, and who am I if I didn't figure this out, and I'm not right, and I need to be right. And so that's what led to the creation of the unity sign, was what would be the simplest way to spark a conversation? You know, what would be the very simplest way? And I think that's the simplest way. It covers all languages. It covers, clears all racial and age and sexism and genderism and religion. It's just saying, I think we're all connected, and maybe we should act that way, right? So we're daring to remind ourselves first, I'm doing my best to remember, and let's do it. So that's the unity sign that I continue to believe would be a beautiful thing to spread around the world. And it speaks right to what you're talking, ST, the remembering that we are a very young and naive species. And I want to have a bunch of empathy for my species, because we bought into the idea that we're the everything. Right? I mean, this is all about humanity, and we're the grand prize, and it could never get any better. And clearly there's nothing else going on in the entire universe besides me, right? And us humans trying to do our thing. And so daring to know ourselves beyond our humanity and know that we signed up for a remembering and forgetting game and that we're in the middle of playing it. And it's incredibly challenging. I often compare it to giving a 1,500 piece puzzle to a third grader, right? It's like, here you go, good luck, right? And if you really stop to look at this dance of humanity that we're in, it's incredibly confusing and paradoxical. And, you know, love and happiness are the greatest things, but love is the most crazy. How in the heck would you even define it, let alone try to create it and then keep it and kind of dance? And we all strive for happiness, but really it's joy that we need, because happiness is this crazy quick hit and joy is this remembering. And then you mix in 8 billion people who all think about things differently. Good luck, kids, right? Here you go with your puzzle. So anywho,
beautiful,
thank you.
Peter. Thank you so much. I do want to, Julie, you had a share a while back. So would you like
Yeah,
to?
and Flo too. We haven't got to hear from Flo if she wants to say something
So
either.
yeah, so Julie and then Flo, if you want to chime in, and then we'll close it out. It's just it's so rich. You know, we started with 1 hour and then it easily got bumped to the 90 minutes. And now here we are 2 hours. And so Julie, did you want to share?
I usually do. um, well, I just had this thought. Although I think Bob and ST, I think everybody has, has expressed it. Ali expressed it, and that's this question. I didn't feel very. I met a German after the people chat after Humanity Rising, and I think it was yesterday, and he asked me who I voted for, and I said, well, I don't feel like I had a choice. There wasn't any choice. There was nothing representing me in the two choices, and it just occurred to me that maybe the people who voted for Trump feel the same way. So I think some of what you were talking about, Bob, could be true. They're not necessarily Trump supporters. They're voting Republican. I'm not a Biden supporter. I just felt compelled to, even though I really would have liked to have voted the Green Party. But anyway, that's one thing. And I got here, I live in Tulia, Washington, which is on the Olympic Peninsula. During the day, out these windows behind me, you can see the forest that I live in a 10-acre forest around a lake. And I was invited by Kate, although I read the time wrong. Must have been a clock that didn't get changed to falling back. So I'm here for the next hour for the climate meeting, I think is what I wrote down. But when I popped in and somebody the room let me in, and somebody said, would you like to go to co-creator room number whatever this is? And I went, yeah, I'm all about co-creating. So I want to say that since I've been here, yeah, I see more of my family, and I appreciate all of you. I have instant oneness with you all, with all of your hearts and minds, it sounds like. And I love what ST shared. The first part of what she shared was great, and the second part was amazing with all of that love. And what Ali shared was wonderful too, because it reminds me why I'm showing up. I know that there's lots of groups out there that I can talk to. I mean, there's lots of people that I can talk to if I need to talk, but I forget that there's, and I forget too sometimes that, the feeling of despair, and if there isn't anybody to talk to, which is what Ali expressed, that could be sad, but it's not true. There's a lot of groups. I just found Humanity Rising through Charles Eisenstein on the day that he spoke, which was, I think that was the day of election day. And so now I'm going there every day, and oh my gosh, then there's the chat people, the after chat people, and then there's you, and harmonic convergence is still happening. I didn't know that. I heard about that years ago. So yeah, it's really nice to come back online and realize that there's a lot of people now connecting online and finding that unity and co-creating the world that we all hope for and we know is possible, supporting all beings on earth.
Oh,
Thanks for being
thank
here.
you. Glad you found us, even if it was a partial non-accident.
Yeah, now I have to find out when you actually like meet. I have no information about you at all.
Well, the co-creators convergence has a talk every Thursday evening here on The Conversation, but the conversation goes from at least noon to midnight every day. And there's Kate who can chime in, your inviter, and Melissa's chiming in. I know the block party goes 24 hours a day. Anyhow, anytime, day or night, you can come to theconversation.cc and stumble into a handful of yahoos trying to figure out their world. And Melissa's chiming in. It's now fully up to 24 hours a day. Kate, you want to chime in quickly, hon?
Well, I just wanted to say, well, a couple comments, but I know we're over time, so you know me, I'm never ending story. Julie, I'm sorry. The climate healers actually meet tomorrow, 7 to 9 in the morning and 7 to 9 at night on Fridays. I guess just a couple things I wanted to say is, while everybody was glued to the TV watching results, I was here on the conversations and Pato and Antoinette showed up. And, you know, it felt like a continuation of the Caravan of Unity. As Pato spoke about, he's doing a spiritual circle with children once a week it's Tuesdays at noon Pacific that he's doing it. And what does he say? To provide a service to the young people who are interested in learning more about God, ethics, morality, truth, beauty, and goodness. And so I just wanted to put the word out there because I saw Peter read his Tale of Two Waves to a 6-year-old Maggie who just squealed with delight. Read it again, read it again. And so the hope for that unprogrammed mind to come through with some of these, because we've had so many lies to us, and as we're speaking, it depends on who you trust to tell your truth, you know, to listen to get the truth from. And of course, everyone is doing the best that they can with any, you know, at any given moment. And that's why I think these children are going to show us some ways through these labels and categories that we know erroneously, you know, take away from who people really are. And I guess that was my ad. Julie, come back tomorrow. You'll love Silas is here in the morning.
Kate, can you just say, you said Pato's talking on the children. Is that on The Conversation? When's that time frame?
It's actually, he has well, they're thinking about, you know, Jamin is talking about that he wants to shine the light on so many networks, which right. Julie and I are so familiar. Well, there's a gentleman named Stan at the Magic Community who has started, you know, Humanity Rising is having these brilliant panel discussions every day, but there's really no conversation after. So Stan started that conversation after. And Stan's been talking to Jamin, and I have a very similar idea of how they want to organize these things. And, you know, it is in the people's voice coming together when we can learn from one another that we can come up with the new concepts. It feels like harvest the genius, if you will, mine the collective intelligence.
Yeah,
all right, thank you. Well,
so I'll put Pato's Zoom line link in the chat.
Okay, please do. So put that in the chat. I did a little check-in with Flo, so she's complete. And I do want to wrap this up. I'm going to actually give Peter like a moment to see if he wants to close. And then I will remind you guys about how to save the chat and who's coming on next week. So Peter, did you have like a 1 or 2 sentence wrap up here?
Yes, thank you. Beautiful. Just a joy to be in circle with you all. Kate, I need a shake of the rattle that I can hear to feel a closing of sorts. And it's just really an honor to just get to share and bounce some ideas around with you all. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And keep remembering and keep forgetting. And we're playing the game the best we can. Much, much love.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you
Thank
so
you, Karen.
much.